Connecticuters are hitting a massive wall of pain at the pump right now, and the financial squeeze is completely undeniable. Gas prices in Connecticut in 2026 have been pretty high overall, though they have moved around a lot during the year. Let us look at the real picture so you can understand it clearly. Right now, in early June 2026, the current statewide average for a gallon of regular gas is sitting squarely around $4.49 to $4.51 per gallon. To put that into perspective for you, that is slightly above the total United States national average, which is hovering at roughly $4.29 to $4.32 per gallon. But if you live or drive in the Hartford area, the situation gets even tougher. In your area of Hartford, local drivers have been seeing prices hit roughly $4.60 to $4.65 per gallon recently. Think about how fast that empties your wallet just to commute to work. This current high baseline is part of a much bigger trend of pain we have tracked all year. Earlier in 2026, we witnessed massive price spikes where costs climbed as high as $4.60 to $4.63 statewide back in May. Some regional reports even showed a staggering $4.62 average across the state, which put Connecticut about 10 to 12 cents completely above the national levels. Now, have there been any lower snapshots? Yes, there have been some short dips. Some market trackers showed temporary drops near $3.20 per gallon at points, but you need to know that those are just short-term dips or alternative datasets, and they are absolutely not the dominant market price you see when you pull up to the station. So what does this actually mean for your daily budget in real talk? It means Connecticut is consistently and uncomfortably above the national average. You should expect a normal price range throughout the rest of 2026 of about $4.20 all the way to $4.70 per gallon. Geography also matters here because urban areas like Stamford and Hartford can run quite a bit higher than the rural spots in the state. Why is this happening? Prices have been incredibly volatile, driven directly by intense global tensions, broken supply chains, and heavy local taxes. The bottom line is simple. Gas in Connecticut in 2026 is not cheap. It is sitting solidly in the mid-$4 range most of the time, which is wildly expensive compared to past years and still higher than much of the country. Stay tuned, stay alert, and protect your wallet. Grocery prices in Connecticut in 2026 are noticeably high right now. The real story here is how these prices actually feel to you versus the raw numbers on the paper. Right now, the overall grocery cost level in Connecticut sits slightly above the national average, coming in at about 3% higher than the rest of the country. That difference sounds small when you hear it, but it adds up significantly every single trip you take to the supermarket. The real translation of this data is very simple. You are not living in the absolute most expensive state in America, but you are definitely not living in a cheap one either. Let us talk about what people are actually spending out of their pockets every single month. For 2 adults, you are looking at spending around $650 to $740 every month, depending on your personal shopping habits. For families across the state, that number easily hits $900 to over $1,200 per month. And remember, that massive amount of money is just for mostly cooking at home, not for eating out at restaurants. Think about how much that hurts your wallet. Let us look directly at some concrete example grocery prices based on regular Connecticut averages right now. Typical mid-range store pricing looks exactly like this. 1 gallon of milk is going to cost you around $4.29. A dozen eggs will run you about $3.49. 1 pound of chicken breast is sitting at around $4.99. A loaf of bread is costing you about $3.29, and 1 pound of apples is hovering around $2.49. You need to keep in mind that these are just the baseline prices, meaning if you shop at organic or premium stores, your receipt will be much higher. So what is happening in 2026 that you need to know? Grocery prices are still actively rising by about 2 to 3% this year. Some items are jumping even faster than that. Beef, vegetables, and coffee are all notably up right now. These overall food costs are still feeling heavy pressure from high fuel costs, ongoing supply chain issues, and global instability. Why does it feel so much worse than the official data shows? Here is the real reason. Even though inflation slowed down a bit recently, prices are still way higher than they were pre-2020. In fact, groceries are up about 25% since 2020 nationally, so even these small increases happening now are stacking directly on top of already high prices. That is exactly why people everywhere are saying, I am spending the exact same amount of money, but I am getting way less food in my cart. Here is the straight truth you need to hear. Connecticut groceries are moderately expensive and they are consistently rising. You are likely paying a baseline of $4 to $5 per item, which means you are shelling out $150 to $250 per week per household. And yes, it is absolutely enough to stress budgets all across the state. The bottom line is that you are living in a state where groceries are not the absolute worst in the country, but they are high enough to feel like a constant pressure on your life every single day. Are you trying to rent an apartment in Connecticut in 2026? I will be completely straight with you because it is officially one of the single biggest financial pressures that regular people are dealing with right now. Let us dive right into the real breakdown so you actually understand exactly what you are up against in this brutal market. Right now across Connecticut, the overall average rent has soared to approximately $1,950 per month, while a basic one-bedroom apartment is averaging around $1,664 every single month. What does that mean on a grand scale? That puts Connecticut well above the United States national average and lands it squarely in the top 10 most expensive states for rent across the entire country. Think about that for a second, because it means your hard-earned money is evaporating faster just to keep a roof over your head. This is where it gets much more realistic for you as a local resident. The average rent overall in the Hartford area is running between $1,600 and $1,650 per month. If you are hunting for a one-bedroom apartment, you are going to see prices ranging from around $1,350 all the way up to $1,600, with some data estimates showing a baseline average of $1,488. Need a bit more space for a two-bedroom unit? Prepare to shell out between $1,560 and over $1,800 a month. Let us look at the real-world expectations for your budget. If you find a budget spot, expect to pay between $1,200 and $1,400. A decent, standard place will cost you $1,500 to $1,800, and if you want a nice or newer apartment, you are easily looking at $1,800 to $2,300 or even more. So what exactly is driving this trend in 2026? Rent prices are still rising across the state, but thankfully they are moving at a slightly slower pace of about 2% to 5% increases overall. While some specific cities are finally starting to stabilize, the reality is that they remain incredibly expensive. The underlying problem is that tenant demand is exceptionally high, and the actual supply of limited housing means prices stay completely elevated. If you listen to what locals are saying on the ground, the real-life feel is devastating. Local residents are openly shouting, I am paying $1,700 to $1,900 for a basic one-bedroom apartment now. And that complaint lines up perfectly with the hard data, especially if you are looking at anything labeled as modern or luxury. Why does this rent situation feel so incredibly brutal to the average worker? This is the exact part most politicians and economic reports do not say clearly to the public. Wages simply have not kept up with these surging housing costs. You often need a personal income of $50,000 to $70,000 just to live comfortably completely solo in this state. And do not forget that once you add mandatory utilities, hidden fees, and massive upfront security deposits, the real cost of living is significantly higher than anything advertised on a rental website. The burning bottom line for 2026 is that Connecticut rent is expensive, and the market is tight. While Hartford is admittedly cheaper than neighboring megacities like New York City or Boston, it is still not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. You must expect an absolute minimum of $1,500 for a solid place and over $2,000 if you want true comfort or a prime location. We are standing at a definitive turning point in history, and it is time to face the absolute, unvarnished truth without backing down. This war completely needs to end right now, or we are going to lose our homes, our stability, and our very existence on this planet. Think about the massive, catastrophic stakes we are dealing with every single day as global conflicts rage on. The ripple effects are tearing through our communities and threatening the safety of every single household. Are we really going to sit back and watch everything we have built get entirely wiped out? Absolutely not. This is an existential threat to our families, our future, and our peace of mind, and the absolute destruction must be stopped immediately before it is too late. At the exact same time, look at the brutal economic devastation hitting regular people right here at home. The cost of living has spiraled so completely out of control that we cannot afford anything even if we work 3 full jobs. How is anyone supposed to survive when working 24 hours a day is still not enough to cover basic food, rent, and utilities? It is completely insane. People are exhausting themselves, trading away their health and their time with their families, and they are still drowning in bills. This is a direct, urgent alarm for independent news listeners everywhere, because the system is breaking and regular working people are paying the ultimate price. We cannot afford basic survival anymore, and that is the straight, fearless truth. Please feel free to follow, subscribe, comment, like, and share. This helps you to stay connected to me, and it helps me to remain here creating more content for you. Thank you, love always, Maria DC Santiago.